Det sjunger en sång inom mig här den 8 januari. Min Jesus lever. Därför vill jag leva. Det är en underbar sång och han är ju meningen med livet. Jag tycker att ju mörkare blir i världen desto mer längtar man ju efter himlen, eller hur? Att få se och få skåda honom en dag. Och vi ska läsa lite här i början innan vi har alla klipp och så här då. Och vi ska läsa om Jesus. Jesaja 49:8. Så säger Herren: jag bönhör dig i nådens tid. Jag hjälper dig på frälsningens dag. Jag ska bevara dig och göra dig till ett förbund för folket. För att upprätta jorden eller landet och utskifta de förödda arvslotterna. Ja, här handlar det ju både om frälsningens dag, det handlar ju om oss också, men det handlar ju också om Jesus, ser du här. Han är ju frälsaren som kan frälsa oss och han ska bli förbundet med folket. Alltså frälsningen kommer från judarna återigen. Sen går vi till Jeremia 30:7. Och vi vet att det ska komma en dag som heter Herrens dag. Strax innan Jesus kommer börjar den nöden. Och här läser vi om Jakob. Men nu ska vi lägga märke till då att hela skriften är inandad av Gud och han vakar över sitt ord. Och här uppenbaras den uppståndne Jesus Kristus på ett märkbart sätt. Detta är en stor dag, ingen är den lik. En tid av nöd är detta för Jakob, men han ska bli frälst ur den. Och det ska ske på den dagen, säger Herren Sebaot, att jag ska ta oket från din nacke och bryta sönder det och slita av dina band. Inga främlingar ska längre tvinga honom att tjäna sig, utan de ska tjäna Herren sin Gud och David sin kung, som jag ska låta uppstå åt dem. Ja, här har ju David varit död i många år, men han ska ändå uppstå. Vad är detta för David, tror ni? Ja, det är Messias. Och Petrus han använder detta på pingstdagen då 3000 judar blir frälsta i predikan. Lägg märke till att han predikar om samma David som har uppstått från de döda, alltså den i Jeremia 30:9 här. Apostlagärningarna 2:29. Mina bröder, jag får väl öppet säga er att vår stamfader David är både död och begraven. Hans grav finns bland oss än idag. Ja, där har vi varit också. Och det står många judar där och nicka och bad vid Davids grav. Käre Jesus, ta bort täckelset så de förstår. David var profet och han visste att Gud med ed hade lovat att sätta någon av hans ättlingar på sin tron. Ja, Messias heter ju Davids son och han ska regera i evighet. I förväg såg han Kristi uppståndelse och sa: han ska inte lämnas kvar i graven och hans kropp ska aldrig se förgängelsen. Gud välsigna er vänner och låt det sjunka in i er förbundet med folket. Halleluja, det vi är inympade i. Och Israel ska in i samma träd. Halleluja, deras eget träd. Gud välsigna er, så hörs vi vidare under dagen. Amen.
Massive happened, an earthquake, a cataclysmic event in political terms, of course, which revealed to us who is going to be the next ruler of Gaza. And yet, you're not going to hear this in any mainstream media, in any social media, nowhere else. Stick around because I'm about to blow your mind. Now look, one of the most interesting questions about Gaza is what happens on the day after the war. It's clear that the IDF is beating Hamas. It's only a question of time until the Israelis have a military defeat of Hamas and they own Gaza. The Israelis have literally zero desire to control the Gaza Strip over a prolonged period of time. For that matter, they also don't have the US approval, who's not going to let that fly. So both parties have no plans for the Israelis to stay there and stick around for a long period of time as the civilian ruler of the Gaza Strip. The Israelis tried this before, they want none of this. But also, they know they don't want Hamas in there. The US and the Israelis are saying, we're not going to let Hamas take over Gaza. Never again. So that leaves us with one of two solutions. Either the Palestinian Authority or decantonization of Gaza, dividing it into different emirates, different cantons, and letting each family control their own city. Now, I think that solution is better, and I've heard it being floated around for years. I didn't come up with it, but it seems that the United States is more closing in on the Palestinian Authority idea because it's simpler to understand, it's more inside the box, and it's quicker to implement. So it might not be optimal, but it's a quick fix. It's a band-aid. Now, the problem is that the Israelis are saying, look, we don't agree to that. The Palestinian Authority is just as bad as Hamas. They may not have the religious motivations like Hamas has, but they still want to kill us just as bad. It's in their charter. Not to mention the fact that's not even the worst thing about the Palestinian Authority, according to the Israelis. They can't even control the West Bank. They're not particularly popular. People think of them as corrupt, as old, as impotent. You're going to let this 85-year-old guy take over Gaza? He's not going to make it 2 weeks. So what's the point with this Palestinian Authority idea? And the Americans are looking at this and saying, well, you're kind of right. We would love to have the Palestinian Authority take over, but this Palestinian Authority, it's not really cutting it. So this was the big dilemma. Either they go for decantonization or reviving the Palestinian Authority. And about 72 hours ago, we found out which plan they're leaning towards. 72 hours ago, the Israelis killed Salah el-Aruri, a Hamas political bureau guy who was in charge on the relationship between Hamas and Iran via the Hezbollah. Now, he was located in Beirut, in Lebanon, where he was assassinated, but his assassination has to do with the second hat he has, which is the #1 Hamas guy on the West Bank, which is controlled by the Palestinian Authority. So he was the main oppositioner of the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, and he was extremely popular. In fact, according to recent polls, 70% of people on the West Bank support Hamas, not the Palestinian Authority. If there were an election in the West Bank, which we haven't seen that in years, for good reason, Hamas would win in a landslide, and this guy was the #1 Hamas guy in that territory. So taking him out was a huge service to the Palestinian Authority. The United States and the Israelis cleared the path for the Palestinian Authority by taking out their main opposition. Now, understand this. The Israelis have known his location for years. They could have taken him out. Why didn't they? Why now? Well, because to take him out on Lebanese soil, inside Lebanese capital Beirut, would require a U.S. approval. You can't do that because the potential to ignite the entire region into a whole massive warfare and potentially drag the United States to a huge conflict, it can't be done without pre-approval from the U.S. So the fact is that the United States for sure cleared the Salah el-Aruri assassination for the first time in years. They let the Israelis do it. Why? They let them do it so they can prevent from Hamas from gaining power in the West Bank and try to rebuild some clout into the Palestinian Authority. But the problem is that saving the Palestinian Authority is one thing and taking out its opposition, it's another thing. But who's going to take over Gaza? Not this version of the Palestinian Authority, obviously. They're too old, they're too corrupt, nobody respects them. So they needed some new guy, somebody new who's charismatic, who's popular, who has the balls, the cojones to do it, who has the network, who has the understanding. But there's nobody like that. Not in Gaza, definitely not in the West Bank. So who is it going to be? That was the missing part for the past 72 hours I was trying to figure out. And 4 hours ago, I finally figured it out, and now I know who this guy is going to be, and I'm about to blow your mind. Now remember this name, Mohammed Dahlan, 62-year-old former Fatah leader who lived in the West Bank and got exiled 12 years ago by the current Palestinian Authority to the UAE, United Arab Emirates. Now, he was exiled because he was trying to take them on and become the opposition. They didn't particularly appreciate him being in opposition, so they exiled him to the UAE, where for the past 12 years, he's been making millions and maybe even billions of dollars, becoming very, very rich in the private sector. Now, ever since then, he was quiet. Couldn't hear him for a word. He was doing his own thing, and we haven't heard about him for years until in 2020, his name came up again. And in that context, it blew everybody's mind because he's not only now the new close advisor to the government of the UAE, he was one of the key operators in making the Abraham Accords happen, the normalization of the relationship between the Arab countries, between UAE and Saudi and the Israelis. Mohammed Dahlan was one of the key operators making this happen. Now, he was supposed to inherit the Palestinian Authority at the end of the Abraham Accords. Once the Saudis would have signed, which was literally weeks away, he was supposed to go in with the backing of the US, the Israelis, the Saudis, and the UAE and take over this Palestinian Authority just in the West Bank and become its new leader on behalf of this whole new coalition. But the October 7th attack put a whole monkey wrench into this and put the entire process on ice. And ever since that October 7th attack, we have not heard him speak. All that changed 4 hours ago when he interviewed to an official UAE media outlet, almost as if it was a government-issued statement. And this is what he had to say. He said 5 things which are going to blow your mind. Number 1, he said, the October 7th attacks ruined Gaza. Now, he also refused to praise Hamas for their struggle against the Israelis and for their attack. And what he also said here is very interesting. He said, look, I'm hoping for a peaceful coexistence between these two people, the Palestinian and the Israelis, because otherwise there's going to be more cycles of violence who's not going to lead anywhere. More death, more destruction. And of course, he talked about the war and he said that he thinks there's no winners in this war, etc., etc. But the main piece was that he's being primed right now by the UAE to kind of come in and take over. It fits the Saudis because it means they cut off Iran. It fits the Israelis because it means they cut off Qatar. Qatar no longer has their clout in there. And it fits the US because it's quick and this guy is workable. He's charismatic. He has the support of the Palestinian people. He's extremely popular. He's now an outsider. He's very wealthy, very successful, and he understands the actual going-ons of Gaza and the West Bank because he was the main Fatah guy there for years. In fact, he was supposed to inherit this whole thing. So the only losers here would be the political bureau of Hamas, who was hoping to get integrated in this new PA with Abu Mazen and the current crew. That ain't happening now. Obviously, Iran and Qatar lose because they lose clout. And now the Israelis with the US, the Saudis, and the UAE have their guy inside. And also that guy is extremely popular and accepted. And they don't need Hamas stamp to say, okay, we're part of this. Because this guy is going to be good enough to rally the Palestinians behind him. And potentially, if he's willing to do so, to work with everybody to find some sort of a workable coexistence. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be all kumbaya around the campfire. This isn't that sort of story, but I'm saying that this is the solution that's being led right now. I specifically prefer the cantonization idea better, but this one seems to be what they're going with. My job isn't to give them grades, it's just to tell you what's actually going on because I'm seeing mainstream media drop the ball and not do its job. So this is what's going on. 72 hours ago it started. 4 hours ago we found out what's the end game. PA in Gaza, Mohammed Dahlan, he's going to be the guy who's going to be running the show. Now, I should mention that in the interview, he denied having any desire to rule over the West Bank or the Palestinians or Gaza, which of course can be the biggest sign that that's exactly what's going to happen. Or it also means that he might be the guy who's going to be managing this whole thing from behind the scenes and they're going to have some sort of a figurehead or some sort of a front man to run the show from inside Gaza. It's unclear yet, but he's definitely going to be the mastermind. Whether his face is going to be on it officially or he's going to be behind the scenes, it's unclear. Actually, if he goes behind the scenes and manages this whole process, there's still a chance to create some sort of a hybrid solution of cantonizing Gaza and having Dahlan from UAE with their money, with their backing, managing this from a civilian standpoint, which might not be such a bad idea. We'll see. Now, as always, these videos are not fully monetized, and if you would like to support this,
הנה על שורק נחתו איזה שמחזה מרהיב. אחי, תמיד יש לי את הפחד הקטן הזה שיעוף את זה. הם יורים עוד. חדל לי, חדל. כמה פסטולים יש? אני לא עושה את המצניח הזה. זה זמן טוב, זה זמן טוב לפסטול.
טוב, אנחנו נכנסנו פה לבית בדר שטופח. בהתקפה מצאנו פה הרבה ממצאים. קודם כל מצאנו חגורת נפץ. אפשר לראות פה גם מקורות של קלט, שעוד מעט נראה את הקלט. יש פה שתי מערכות הפעלה. מצאנו פה קודם כל המון מדים. אתה רואה? יש פה מעיל של חמאס. יש פה מדים בצבעים שונים. יש לנו פה, אפשר לראות וסטים, אפודים, בלטיות. יש לנו את הקלט פה.
מחסניות.
אתה יודע כמה זה?
ציוד חשמל וחבלה.
מילים של נשק. מצאנו
כרטיס חבר של אונר"א.
כרטיס חבר של אונר"א.